I like how the chat immediately catches up on the bug that happened. Good job,
Don't tell.
Akamide.
Don't tell.
I have been trying desperately to recreate it for such a long time, but I can't do it, and it bugs me to no end.
Bugs me to no end. Oh, Joachim, I'm finally bringing you to the pun level. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another stream of Imperator Rome. As you may have noticed, we released a little bit of an update. You know, just a little one. Nothing big. It definitely wasn't a major overhaul of everything. You may have noticed I was gone. Your friendly neighborhood community manager was gone for 2 weeks. I was working on a very big project. I'm so sorry I left everyone hanging in the lurch for that, but we had some excellent co-hosts in the meantime. And with me, as always, is Joachim. Hello, Joachim.
Hello, everyone.
As you may recall, Joachim and I are a buddy comedy waiting to happen. We got our memo about dressing like twins today, so we're dressed the same, as usual. Yeah,
I'm trying to work on the beard, but I don't really have the facial hair growth that you do.
okay.
So
I'll
I'm
forgive
struggling.
you. I'll forgive you this time. But yes, we are playing on 2.0. We got 2.0 updated. You guys saw the sneak peeks coming up in the weeks before this, and we finally get to play a full game. Last week we were the Bosporan Kingdom. Now we are going to just kind of continue with that known legacy. Hopefully it will go better than the last time that Joachim and I played the Bosporan Kingdom. I mean,
I don't know what you mean. We sort of ended on like a cliffhanger just before New Year's, and
we did.
Nobody really knows what would have happened. I don't think those 80k Antagonids troops would kill us or anything like that.
Yeah,
so
it was fine.
Really anything could happen. So I think it's fine.
I think we're good to go, though. I think we're ready. We have a nice little map going already. So
basically what happened last time, we grabbed this part and we grabbed this part.
Yep.
So we've already sort of expanded a little bit. We played about 7 years. We didn't really play it for that long. And
now here we are.
Here we are. We're making a claim on Tyrus, and we're making a claim on Chersonesus, which is this part. Because these are basically the two nations that have Bosporan pops in the area, and we do want those sweet Bosporan pops, because that actually matters now. I've sort of been going back and forth if I should integrate the systems, because they give me a lot of levies, but they also really they're sort of mediocre. So I've sort of been going a little bit back and forth between it. So yeah, no, that's basically the situation. We got some pops from. So this is interesting, right? Because it says, because I actually have to build up, right? Reinforce, I guess. So Tyrus is this tiny little nation, and we are going to eat them. Was the plan?
Yes. Yes.
We're going to raise our levies and start moving them over to the place. I really should start getting used to the new levy map mode, because then I can actually raise them closer. But
you should.
Well,
I'm disappointed.
It's regarding a GFX mod mainly.
Might have to do with the UI, but I'm not 100% on that. That is definitely not my area of expertise. That's Joachim's. I'm throwing him right under the bus. It's his fault. So.
I mean, apparently it is my area of expertise. I didn't know that. Oh, I mean, it's nice to hear that, though.
Wow, there's a question for you in chat, Joachim. There you go, buddy.
Is this the day that Joachim proves that he's a good player? No, obviously not. That's not going to happen.
Oh.
Are you planning to make the very easy difficulty even easier? I don't think we really have made massive changes to the difficulty settings.
I don't think so, no.
Nor do I think people have ever talked about it. But
now somebody has talked about it, and you have to think about it.
No, someone has mentioned it. It's certainly something that can be brought up, and we can take a look at it.
Hey, Joachim, you know what time of the stream it is, right?
Is it the staying hydrated part of the stream?
That's right. Are you staying hydrated?
I actually had quite a lot of drink just before we started the stream.
I'm so happy. You didn't die of dehydration while I was gone. You had just
I
something
mean, yeah,
to
I'm still
push you.
here. It's actually quite insane.
It is. It is. It's a little insane that we're all still here, I think, but you know, that's a weird existential crisis for stream that we're not going into, I guess.
With this update, is Egypt still a good beginner country? I think Egypt is always going to be a good beginner country. It's like Egypt starts as big as it is. And it has like a lot of benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And its biggest neighbor is the Antigonids. We don't see that anymore because they've sort of crushed the Antigonids over here. But their biggest neighbor is the Antigonids, and the Antigonids are brought into this four-sided war against Egypt, the Seleucids, Macedon, and Thrace. So they generally don't have the chance to actually sort of focus on Egypt. So you can basically be like, hey, what do I want of their land, and just leave it at that. And then you still have like this really like safe, huge area with like a lot of benefits, right?
Yeah.
So Egypt really is like a very easy beginner nation, I think. Originally, I would have said Macedon, but Macedon we've sort of made a little bit more difficult as time goes on, and now they really get like crushed by the Antigonids quite a lot. So they have
update game on Twitch. That would be a Nurgle thing. I think he's got it.
Oh, is Nurgle not doing his job again?
Oh, dang.
That's shocking.
Dang. Why are you always going after Nurgle? I thought you guys were friends.
I mean, the best friends are the ones that sort of mess with each other, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Oh, we are victorious. Imagine that. Yeah! Alright, guys. Game's been updated on Twitch. Thank you for letting us know. We are now cooking with gas. Is that a saying that you have in Scandinavia? Cooking with gas?
No, because we don't use gas. Because we're not barbarians.
That's odd, considering I have a gas stove in my apartment. Huh.
Well, I've never seen one in over here, so there you go. Oh, we started a war against them, and then a revolt happened. Well, that's
no. How sad.
awkward.
How sad.
Well, the annoying thing is that they sort of took the air that we already sort of controlled, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's kind of a bummer. But that's okay. We'll get it back. I'm sure they will just give it to us politely and friendly when we request it from them.
So I sort of like just before the stream now, I was playing a game where I think I was like in the last couple of years of the game, and I had gotten like all of the siege inventions that we've added to the game. So the sieges just went like hyper quick, and now I'm sitting here looking at this thing.
Yeah, the little siege timer. 7%. Yeah, all right, let's go. Let's go. Do you think our luck has changed since 2.0?
No, I don't.
No, I don't think so. Okay.
I played enough 2.0 to know that at least my luck hasn't changed massively. But I mean, if it wants to surprise me, then yeah.
14%. I mean, this could be the day. This could be our day today, Joachim.
I don't think it's going to be our day today.
No, you don't think so? I believe. Okay, 35. Maybe 35. I believe in 35.
You're going to be disappointed.
Look, man, I'm a dreamer, all right? I am the dreamer of dreams.
I think we can set up the speed a little bit. So you can sort of see the disappointment in, you know...
Still 35, so, you know, here we are. None. There is no % chance. You have starved. You are starving.
Yeah. I didn't see that they had a level 2 fort, which makes things a tad tougher, because then we actually need 4,000 men to siege it. And our luck was not great. So what we're going to do, when we don't have, you know, a lot of luck, we have a lot of mercenaries. So we're just going to bring on the mercenaries.
All right. So I've got the
we need to actually.
I've got the Brits and the Germans on my side with my cooking with gas idiom. So take that, Joachim.
Like I said, barbarians, right?
Dang, going after the Brits and the Germans and Nurgle all in one conversation. Man, who's next?
It's like I don't even want to be liked by anyone.
What are you, Rome? Get out of here.
So the thing is, I don't actually want my people to starve, so I'm just going to pull out entirely.
Probably good.
And then we're going to do this all over again and start over. We're just going to use the mercenaries to do I want to work for.
You there, hired man. Go.
You're just going to keep you there. I don't care about the mercenaries. They can starve to death for all I
Yeah, they're
care.
mercenaries. Who cares?
That's sort of. I would have said that's their job, but I feel it's sort of mean saying that.
Your job is to starve to death. Why are you paying them? Why are we paying them again?
Oh, look. It's barbarians, our favorite thing.
You gonna go say hi? We gonna go visit some barbarians?
Oh.
Oh man,
Who's
yeah.
the
For those of you
governor?
that don't know, Texas is dealing with
you.
some weird snow issues right now. There's a giant hill by my house back in Texas. People are snowboarding down this hill. And of course, the first question you have in your mind when you think Texas is, why do they have skis and snowboards? It took me a second. They're actually boogie boards and water skis.
I like how the chat
Yeah.
immediately catches up on the bug that happened. Good job,
Don't tell.
Akamide.
Shh, don't tell.
I have been trying desperately to recreate it for such a long time, but I can't do it, and it bugs me to no end.
Haha, bugs me to no end. Oh, Joachim, I'm finally bringing you to the pun level. Welcome. I don't
Is it
think
realistic
so.
to have 10k soldier battle at this age? Because the Catalonic battle was around 100k soldier and the total 8th century later.
Mhm.
So we do have examples of battles with a lot of men, right?
Mhm.
Though it is hard to know exactly how reliable those historical sources are. If you do go to look for it, you will be able to find a lot of like the major battles that really
Mhm.
had like supposedly a whole lot of soldiers. So
Huge amount, like terrifying amounts.
going by those numbers, you know that's um, that isn't completely unreliable, I think.
Right. But
So I
maybe
would
not
say
exact.
that you have to take it sort of like with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
But even like even if you sort of scale down the numbers slightly, it's still a lot of people. So I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even like non-historical accounts, like not written by troops, but like scholars years later, where they're like, we found X number of bodies. It's still a terrifying amount of like troops and people that they found out in those battlefields. And so, like looking at some of the camp sizes, there's a like a really interesting piece on like analyzing ancient campsites and like where they found fire pits and like waste and remains and stuff around historic battlefields. That is just mind-boggling in the scope and the size of some of these camps. So thinking about just the size of the camps for these troops is just. So that's always been one of my kind of, not necessarily the battles themselves, but like the logistics behind the battles has always intrigued me.
So I made like a well, I had like a war council while you were talking, and the war council said, "Hey, we're attacking these guys, so
Well,
I guess we're attacking those guys."
here we go. Let's go. We're on a trip. We're on a voyage. A voyage, even, if you will.
So this guy is disloyal, and I don't like that.
No. No.
I'm sort of curious what I'm going to do about it.
I mean, you can give him some free hands. No, not liking the joke there, Joachim. Sorry. Free hands.
No.
Free hands, everyone. Free hands.
No, I'm just sort of thinking like, I could sort of theoretically, I guess, give him free hands and immediately just yeet the governorship from him, but I think it's actually been a while since I'm actually trying to bring someone to a trial. I know that the base success chance is quite low,
Right.
but you can actually bring it up quite a bit. And 35% is actually like, if you just give us a 35% chance, that's not actually not the worst.
That's not bad. Yeah, no. Is 75% of a Swedish park ranger's job rescuing metal bands to get lost in the woods? Actually, that's Norwegian park rangers. Joachim's an expert on that. Look for his album
I would
to
say
drop soon.
it's more like in the mountains than in the woods, because Norway is really just like one glorified hillside with a lot of oil. And that's pretty much it. So
Yeah. I mean, all three of the big Scandinavian countries have a problem with it. I was just trying to make fun of Joachim because of his black metal album. Ask him about it; he'll tell you about it.
I would never publicly sing because I think that would be like a, some sort of terrorism. So I literally cannot do that. But then again, I don't really like black metal. I don't really think it is actually singing, right? So maybe this is.
Why am I your friend again? Oh man, but yeah, no. Also, no, the Finns probably wouldn't be happy to be called Scandinavian, but you know what? That's okay because they're not here.
So here's the bad news.
What is it?
They find the guy innocent of all charges. I was hoping that we would find him very, very guilty, but
I mean, we all were, but that's okay. There are other routes still open to us. Are we devs? I am not a dev. I am a community manager. Hello, I am Troy, your community manager for Imperator, and this is Joachim. Joachim does something. I don't know what he does.
occasionally show up on stream.
That's true. That is true. Occasionally. The rest of the time, he may not exist. I don't know.
Oh, right, because this is actually a thing. I'd completely forgotten about this.
Oh.
Because, you know, how we sort of, you refreeze a version of the game a good bit before we launch it, right? Because we need something that is fairly safe. We need to check that everything works, and we do sort of come across bugs, but we decide that they're not important enough to push off the whole release.
Well,
and
I have
one
your
of
new
the bugs
title.
is...
I have your new title right quick. We can go back to bugs, but your new title is definitely Joachim, #1, Bosporan Fan. So mote it be. Bestowed to you by the community. I agree.
So...
Just broke the bug conversation. We've got to discuss this Bosporan Fan thing.
It's not wrong, right? Because I have a character in CK2, and I have a character in Imperator, and they're here both times, right there. It's like, you know, the first... Yeah, no, I guess
now. It's canon now.
And I added the whole Bosporan culture to CK2. And despite what people said, I still added it, so, well, yeah, no.
Oh my god, yes, Bospor Stan. You're not a Bospor anymore, you're a Bospor Stan. Even better. Oh. I'm okay with this. This makes me happy.
I have very mixed feelings on this. How looks the process for creating the soundtrack? I'm actually not sure.
We have a rad sound team. If you're not familiar, I don't really want to cross promote, but like, we did a stream for CK3 and a DD before the break and the holidays of me interviewing the sound team, and it's just an amazing process. They have a concept, right? Whatever the concept is for Imperator, it's regional sounds, right? So they investigate traditional sounds, regional sounds of like instruments they would have used, metals they would have used in materials, building materials they would have had, and they assemble like a Foley studio of it, and then use as close to traditional instruments as they can to create the audio for it. It's an amazing process, and they are so dedicated and hardworking. If you guys happen to ever check out the DDs or interviews for CK3, definitely look for those, because it's a lot of really dense, good information, and there's a lot of just work that I never would have imagined going into a lot of their stuff. They go out on site and record locally if they can. Have a huge Foley collection of like things that we use for audio effects, like all the stuff you hear in the game, all the little sound effects and little discussion points. If we can't do it live, like actually going to site, we will take as close to a reproduction as possible. So for like the crowds, we actually got a crowd of people discussing things in like hushed tones and recorded that, and it's like that's attention to detail that I just love to see. But yeah, for the actual music, they try to recreate as close to possible as the authentic instruments that would be used to give it that same feel. So lots of hard work.
Alternatively, you can say like I do and just call it black magic.
Yes, well, I guess that's fair.
So, bringing it back to what I was originally going to say
The
earlier.
bug, yes.
To take like a full circle on this.
Yeah, back we go.
We usually freeze a version of the game quite a bit before we actually release it, right? Because we want to make sure there's no massive problems. The thing that often happens when you make a game is that you fix something, and you look at it and it works just fine. And then some time passes, and suddenly it doesn't work anymore because someone made some change in between that either changed some parameters or something else that's ended up breaking something later on. And that's a very typical thing. That's if you see like a launch bug, it's usually a change that we recently made beforehand, because we do actually play the game quite a bit, right? You know, I think I've played like 9 full campaigns of Imperator Rome just before 2.0 released or something like that, which is a lot of Imperator Rome.
It's almost like it's your job, though.
Sadly, yes. So yeah, no, you often see like these, oh, how could they not see X launch bug, right? And it's very much like, in most cases, it is because that launch bug happened just before we froze that version of the game, because someone made a change to try and fix something. And that's, you know, that happens when you, say, we try to fix like several hundred bugs before we freeze a version. And then one of those fixes ends up doing something that it's not intended to do. And it's sort of, you know, because you're going through that many bugs at the same time, it does end up happening, and it's really difficult to actually catch all of them.
Right,
because
it's like a pile of cards. You know they're all there, but you don't know where they're. Yeah.
Exactly. You make the change, and then usually the main thing that you're trying to do is actually fixed, but then there's a side effect somewhere that is causing whatever bug is happening, right? And you end up having launch bugs that you didn't expect. So what I was going to say earlier is, we have frozen a version of the game, and then we actually keep playing it, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, hey, we know that this version is the one that we're going to launch with, but we do now see these bugs.
Right. Right.
Are these bugs important enough to stop us from launching this version? Because the whole point is to launch a stable version, right?
Yeah. Or as close to it as we can, and then worry about the fine details after that launch.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're like, hey, are these bugs like important enough to actually change the launch version, or push back the launch or something like that?
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, I know that, say, you can't make 2 grand theaters in a place. It's only like one building, but a mission still tells you that you have to have 2 of them. We knew that, I think, like a week and a half ago or so.
Makes sense.
And we're like, okay, this is not good, right? It's clearly a bug, and we're aware of it, and it's actually quite easy to fix it. But are we going to actually change the launch version for that? And you're like, no, that's not important enough. It's a mission that is probably going to be annoying for the people who actually see it, but it's not important enough to make that change. And there's also things that are not really bugs, but like
it's a feature,
quality of life, right? It's like things that it makes the game better. One of those is that you always get a minimum from a governorship. So one of the changes that have been made after the 2.0 version is that you would always get a minimum amount of levies from a region. No matter if you have integrated pops there or not, you will always get 4.
Yeah.
That is a change that was made later on, that is not live yet. And that is basically just why I was confused, because I've just, you get used to changes, right? And then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, that was not a thing that went live at 2.0. That's a 2.0.1, I believe. So you sort of just, sitting there and you're like, oh, trying to remember what's where.
Can't figure out levies. Is there a video for it? Well, funny you should mention that. We are working on a series of tutorial videos along with Surreal Beliefs that are coming out as we speak. That may be one of the topics, so definitely keep tuned for those. If you haven't, definitely check out the 2 that are out so far. Oh, there's a good camera angle. There's a good camera angle.
So to give you the short version of levies.
Yeah.
Levies are basically troops that you can raise from either your primary culture, so basically the culture that you start with, say Macedonian for the Diadochi, Armenian for Armenia, etc., or from pops that have been integrated into your nation. In other words, pops that have citizen rights or higher.
Yeah.
So if you conquer a large amount of pops from a certain culture type, you can be like, hey, I want to start grabbing these guys as levies as well, and then you give them citizen rights, and they become an integrated part of your nation.
Yes. Oh, and tutorial for you. Diadochi. Yes. Not Diadochi. Diadochi. You're welcome, everyone.
So that's basically levies. So if you want to have more of them, either get more pops of your primary culture, or have more pops from an integrated culture.
Also, Joachim, you made Lambert cry, so you should say goodbye.
It seems like a productive day then.
Can't take you anywhere. But yes, those tutorial videos, we're working on them. So if you haven't seen them yet, head over to our YouTube channel and you can see those new tutorial videos for 2.0 that we're working on.
Yeah, I've never seen the guy before. It's Surreal, right?
Yeah, Surreal, great. Yeah. Love Surreal. One of my really good community contributors.
He has like an amazing voice. He's like the perfect radio voice, right?
Yeah. We've been really lucky. We had the last series of tutorial videos that came out that were really good. We had the series that came out at launch that were really good, and now we have a third series that are just 3 in a row. Great series of tutorial videos, and I love them all so much. So I'm really glad to see that our community stepped up and really knocked it out of the park with those.
A comment that I saw in the chat, I saw that someone asked about the process from 1.0 to 2.0.
Ah, yes.
Which is actually quite interesting, right? Because...
Ooh, it's story time. I'm just gonna roll back here and get ready. Yes.
So, Imperator was a game that had a particular... Actually, is this a bad idea? This is a bad idea. I'm going to destroy the fault there, and... Why can't I move you guys back? There you go. So, Imperator had a particularly short development time, which I think a lot of people know about. And it ended up having not the best launch ever. I guess we can point it out like that. And it is not...
We gained valuable learnings and created an atmosphere where we had the opportunity to succeed and grow in the future. You're welcome.
Yes, it was a shit show, like I would have said it. So, you know, it wasn't particularly fun, right? Because in some ways, as a dev, you could see that there were certain shortcomings with 1.0. But you also get a little bit blind on it, right? You sort of sit there and you sort of work on the same things day in and day out. So you get very blind on what's not really the smoothest experience and how things could be better. You do have ideas on how to improve the game, but you don't necessarily, you don't really feel it like a new player would feel it.
Right.
So, people have a lot of these feedbacks like, hey, this doesn't work, and you're like, oh yeah, that that didn't actually work as well as it should do.
Yeah.
And then you sort of get a lot of these feedbacks, and you have a lot of moments like, hey, this and that should not work like that, and you're like, oh yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would say that we had a lot of that feedback before the release of the game itself, which is not necessarily wrong, but that is what it is.
It's a process.
Yes. So we sort of came out of 1.0, and I'm not going to say that the team was super motivated, because honestly speaking, it's it's a very demotivating process when you launch a game and it doesn't live up to expectations. I think that's a demotivating process both for devs and for gamers, right? Because everyone has had games that they look forward to, and then it doesn't live up to the expectations that they had. So you come out of 1.0 and you're like, okay, we already have plans for 1.1,
Right.
and we have some ideas for the future. Like we've started writing some designs and suggestions for how we can improve the game.
Right. Yeah.
For we started working on 1.01 long before 1.1 actually went live. Like I said earlier, we did have there's a freeze time that's even longer for the actual launch of games than for patches, and then you start working on the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had long since started working on 1.1, and we already know that we're going to improve navies and we're going to do a couple of other things like that.
Yeah.
And then we had the massive negative backlash that we did. So the game ended up going in a very different direction than I think a lot of people thought would happen.
Yeah.
Because then it's suddenly like, okay, people really don't like the mana system that's in the game, and that ended up being pulled out. And then Peter had his whole, hey, I'm going to work like crazy the whole summer, and then just add systems to the game. Hey, we're adding the food system. Hey, we're adding the city system, and
Peter's a madman. Like watching that man's workflow and like seeing the things that he can create is just mind-boggling. It's things that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, like once it's in the game, you're like, obviously that is obviously it belongs in the game. But like going from not having it to it being fully fleshed out in the game is just this. Peter's just like, boop, I have an idea for a system. Oh, also I coded it. Oh, I also wrote it and put it into the game. Oh, it's also in our test branch. And it's like, what? Like, when did you do that? We saw you 3 hours ago. He's like, yeah, I just coded for 3 hours. Just,
So, yeah, Peter is like a real machine when it comes to working.
Peter's like, oh, my back hurts from carrying all you guys around.
So, the 1.2 really changed the direction of the future of the game.
Yeah.
And after around 1.3, when things sort of changed, all Paradox projects have this thing coming from above where they're like, hey, you are going to do X, which is basically Paradox testing different things.
Yeah.
And for Imperator, that was, hey, we want to have a shorter, sort of quicker patch schedule than most of the Paradox games have.
Yeah.
Because most Paradox games have either a yearly or at least, not very often that a patch comes out.
A non-live action cycle, whereas this one is leaning way more towards a live market schedule.
So we had already sort of planned out the culture and religion update. That was going to be one update, right?
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, how do we because we had sort of planned it, right? But we hadn't actually sat down and started working on it, which is, two very different things. Because when you plan something, you do a lot of estimations and assumptions.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start working on it, you learn how many of those estimations and assumptions were correct or wrong. So we ended up being, okay, we have this culture religion update that we ended up splitting in two when we were like, okay, we need to have a quicker update schedule, so we have to figure out how do we sort of adjust these things.
Yeah.
With the plans that we have.
Exactly. Fit them into we have our cornerstones, but how do we fit those things between the cornerstones to make sure that we have a fully fleshed out game?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we sort of came, we already knew that the big update that we wanted after culture and religion was war.
Mm-hmm.
War had sort of been on the horizon for quite a bit at this point already.
Which is where our roadmap came in. We had that projected roadmap of finishing the last year's cycle, I think it was, with Warfare, but that got pushed back, and this is it.
Yeah. So we sort of went into the whole new cycle that we planned with the religion update, which was honestly quite stressful.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of it's not something that's very obvious now when you sort of look back on it, but right there and then there was a lot of small problems that ended up taking a lot longer than you expected.
Yeah.
So as an example, I went through every single deity in the game and changed something with them 6 times. I had to manually go through every single deity and change something with them.
Yeah.
Which is it's not hard.
It's just tedious. It's just tedious. Yeah.
Incredibly tedious.
Yeah.
So I had to do that several times, where you just spend like hours going through, deity after deity, changing that like one or two things, and then going on to the next one, and next one, and next one. And, we ended up having a lot of these like time-consuming tasks that we didn't really expect.
Right.
Because things, like assumptions that we had made, didn't pan out exactly like we had originally planned. And we sort of came out of 1.4, at least me personally, like really, really tired and exhausted and a little bit stressed, right?
Yeah, fatigued.
It felt like, 1.4 went live and we didn't really have all the time we needed to make sure that all of the quality was there, because we were stressed about this whole live schedule thing that we had going on. And then we sort of went into 1.5 with some backpack, basically. We sort of brought some of the problems we had with 1.4 into 1.5, and then we kept sort of faltering a little bit behind what we had planned originally.
There's this saying in community, concept to comfort, and it's a thing that I really like to see, and I think we've done really well with Imperator. Is like you have this core mechanic, or what will one day be a core mechanic, that comes out as this concept, right? And it seems kind of awkward or clumsy when you first implement it. Then you get it into the game and you get people used to it, and they start experiencing it, getting used to it, and it's still kind of clumsy. But then each time we work on it, it becomes a little bit smoother and better, to the point where now it's such a comfort feature that you couldn't imagine the game without it. Yeah.
And like I said earlier, we sort of walked into 1.5 with all of these small issues, right? And then we sort of came out of 1.5, and I'm not going to say that 1.5 was a very well-received update, because I don't think it was. I think it had like a really some cool, neat systems. I actually think like the culture system is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But it had its issues, right?
Well, and honestly, so I feel like 1.5 was like, I don't want to say what I first initially thought of, but like 1.5 felt like cutting away some of the dead branches on a tree so that the tree was healthy enough that we could grow into what 2.0 became, right? So there was a lot of things in like 1.5 that were, while not necessarily things that you see on a daily basis, they were things that we needed to overhaul for the future. And then once we cut those away, we could...
Exciting, right?
Right,
it wasn't
exactly.
The exciting thing. It was sort of like the things that needed to be done because we knew what was going to happen in 2.0.
It's like washing the dishes because you know you have to make dinner tomorrow, and without dishes you can't make good dinner. Yeah, same thing.
So it was very much like that sort of thing. And then we sort of looked at what was originally planned to be 1.6, which was the war update. And you sort of look at it and you're like, hey, what are the things that we need to do? And we really pushed back on the whole live schedule thing, because we knew that some of our earlier updates had sort of had some problems when it came to like bugs or other quality things.
Right.
And then we also knew that we had the wonder system, right? The paradox Tavasic thing, which was when they first sort of came to us with it, it was like hey, this is a sort of like a feature that is not planned to be in any specific spot. It's supposed to be an independent feature that we can sort of fill into a patch, or alternatively make it into its own patch, right? So it's not supposed to be something that we can sort of just slot it in somewhere. That was sort of the idea originally. And we sort of had that, and then we had the UX rework and UI rework. Which is also sort of supposed to be a little bit of the same thing, which is not like, hey, it doesn't necessarily have to go into any specific update, right?
Right.
So all of these things sort of came together at the same spot, and it has been pushed back a little bit, because originally 2.0 was supposed to come out a little bit earlier, but so it sort of came together, and it really made sense to sort of call it 2.0, because
there was so many changes to it. It was such a radical different feel.
It ended up being like these 3 updates that we sort of planned to be separate that sort of came together to be like one fairly large update.
Right.
it's really like, I feel like the big change with 2.0 is that we had the time necessary to make sure that it was
right.
a good update, right? We really feel like we had the time to sort of go through it those extra month, right, or extra 2 months, and actually make sure that everything works as it should. And that's like one of the things that really is nice as a dev, when you can sort of look back at an update and be like, hey, we weren't stressed, we didn't really like, feel pushed for time. We feel like we finished the update and we really actually made, did a good job. So I think that the thing that you can say is that a lot of the updates that we had, like 1.1 was not very stressful because we had done a lot of the work beforehand.
Right.
1.2 wasn't something that was stressful for me, but was stressful for a lot of other people.
Yes, exactly.
1.3 was somewhat stressful because when we first envisioned the mission system in the game, we had plans for 50 missions to go into the game.
Yeah.
And that was like, that's just like, you just make a ballpark number, right? Because, hey, this is a new system and we don't know where it's going to go.
Exactly.
So you're just like, okay, we want missions and we want a lot of them and we're just going to plan a lot of them, right? And then you start actually making them and you're like, holy fuck, this actually takes this takes a lot of time. And
in-depth, concerted, involved effort. Yeah.
Yes. And then it's like, not only does it take a lot of time, but it's actually really expensive on localization.
Yeah.
Which is something that fans is not going to think about, right?
Right.
Fans are going to be like, hey, this thing, it has updates and that's it. But from our side, it's like, okay, we have to actually, we're writing this and this many words, and all of those have to be translated, and you have to start thinking about when you're going to translate them compared to when they're going into the update, right?
Yeah.
Because you're planning that, hey, 10,000 words is 1 week of translator time. So if we give them 40,000 words just before we're going to have an update, they're going to need 4 weeks to actually come back to us with that. And that's not to count in if you are using translators that are also doing work on other projects.
What up,
because there's some translators that sort of, go cross games that work on both, say, EU4 and Imperator, right?
Right.
And then you have to start planning like things like that as well. So a lot of those things were cut. So that was stressful. And then 1.4 and 1.5 was also something that actually really, really, we had to work really hard on to actually make it on time. So I think it's like the journey from 1.0 to 2.0 has been quite rough on the team at times, but I think we're all really proud of how it turned out, because the end vision is sort of here, right? It's sort of like we sort of saw the thing that was going to happen. We knew that there were going to be a UI rework. We knew there were going to be a war rework. We knew that these things were sort of going to knit together, right? So yeah, I think people are really happy about how it ended up turning out.
Well, we are almost out of time. This has been a terrifically in-depth conversation. I have appreciated it, Joachim, as always. I know you put your heart and soul into this game, and I know I have put my heart and soul into this community. I will be back with Joachim next week, I hope. I don't know if Joachim decides he hates me and Nurgle too much. He might just disappear back into the woods. So
I'll be here next week, hopefully with more gameplay and less talking.
Well, I think it was necessary this time. I'm glad we had this conversation. I know 2.0 has been a long time coming. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you haven't already snagged coffee, get out there and do so. It's worth it, I think. I hope. Gosh, I hope. I really feel it is. So, for those of you in the chat, I'll still be here. Joachim's got to go. I'm going to go do a different game, I guess, after this. But definitely join us next week. In the meantime, again, thank you, Joachim, so much for joining us. Thank you, community. And Nurgle, thank you as well. And we'll see you guys next week.